I have a 9-year-old Labradoodle. You may have seen him in some of my videos. He's under my feet right now. Dog tax incoming. He's 60 pounds, completely gentle, never barks, never growls, never has a mean moment. Every single morning, we go on a 2-mile walk, and every morning we pass the same small dogs. The ones who lunge, bark, snarl, and act like they own the sidewalk. And every single time it happens, every single morning, the owners just laugh. They think it's cute. They're not worried about it because their dog is so small. What's the possible harm? They can't actually do any damage to my 60-pound dog, so they never train the behavior out of them. They never create any structure around it because small feels harmless. Now, imagine my 60-pound dog, or even one that is stereotyped as being more threatening, like a pit bull, doing the exact same thing. Lunging, snarling, out of control on a leash. Nobody is going to laugh at that. Nobody is going to think that is cute. That dog has to get trained. That dog has to have structure around its behavior because at that size, you cannot afford not to. But here's the thing. The behavior is the same. The dog is the same problem at 12 pounds that it is at 60. The only thing that changed is the size. And with it, how easy it became to ignore. That is exactly what happens with HR infrastructure in small businesses. Now, I know that HR can be somewhat of a dirty word, one that you don't want to hear about, and one that makes you want to stop listening. And that's fine. I have actually built an entire business on founders not listening to me about this until it's too painful not to. So I know that even if you click away now, you'll come back around eventually. But what if we call it people infrastructure? The infrastructure of how things run inside your business, internally. The infrastructure of how your employees experience your workplace. We can't ignore that, right? We can't act like that isn't important and expect a business to scale. People infrastructure is about so much more than HR stuff. And yet, founders wait. Not because they don't know that structure matters, it's because they're small, and small feels very manageable. They tell themselves they're being agile, scrappy, that the big corporate stuff is for companies that actually need it, not for a 15-person team that moves fast and knows each other's names. Meanwhile, their 500-person counterparts have every one of these systems locked in. Not because they like paperwork, because at that size, you cannot afford not to, just like with the dog. The reality is that people infrastructure is not size dependent. The need for it doesn't start when you hit some big headcount threshold. It starts the day you have your first employee. What changes with size is how long can you go without that structure before it costs you, and how expensive that cost becomes, and then finally, how hard things are to undo. This episode is about what people infrastructure actually is in its most basic form, what it includes, and the most important things to think about as you build it, including the one mistake founders consistently make that turns early infrastructure into later long-term liabilities. If you watched the What Breaks series, this was brought up at 15 employees. This is the second episode in the Fix series because once the founder is above the business, they're out of the weeds. And if I had my preference even before that, they have to focus on people structure. That is the next step. If you are scaling a small business, please hit that subscribe button. This Fix series is going in order, and that order matters. People infrastructure comes before onboarding. That's not arbitrary. I'm going to explain why at the end of this episode, and onboarding will be the next episode. Before we get into the list of what infrastructure is, let's do one clarification. People infrastructure is not a policy manual. It's not a compliance checklist, and it's not an HR hire, although HR support to do this well is a really good idea. But a policy manual with no enforcement mechanism is just a document. Checking legal boxes is the floor, not the foundation. And hiring an HR person who can't help build the infrastructure means you're paying someone to react to what's broken instead of build what's needed. People infrastructure is the set of systems that govern how your people are hired, paid, onboarded, managed, and separated consistently, regardless of who's in the room. There are 5 components to basic people infrastructure. Number 1 is payroll and compensation systems. A payroll system that runs without you touching it. Clear pay periods, direct deposit, tax compliance that doesn't depend on someone remembering to file the taxes, PTO tracking that isn't a spreadsheet, and a documented framework for how you pay people at what level for what roles. So every compensation decision isn't a negotiation from scratch. We have an entire episode on that we'll link below. Number 2 is employee documentation. This includes written offer letters, signed policy acknowledgments, I-9s completed within 3 days of hire, W-4s and state withholding forms on file, an employee file, an actual file, physical or digital, hopefully digital, for every employee that contains their full employment history and any performance documentation. This is the paper trail that determines whether you can survive and defend an employment decision if it's ever challenged. The third component is core policies. You don't need 80. The ones that govern how you run the business and protect you and your employees when something goes wrong. This would be things like anti-harassment and anti-discrimination with real reporting procedures, meaning they know who to go to. Time off, PTO, sick leave, in writing, not ask your manager. Leave of absence. What are you giving for leave of absence? How do they request one? Remote or hybrid work expectations, if applicable. Performance and conduct standards. Separation procedures. Clear, current, and signed by every single employee. Number 4 is benefits administration. Health benefits on a proper platform, not invoiced to a personal email. Enrollment on a defined schedule. Employees who know what they're covered for, what it costs them, and how to use it. COBRA administration with a process behind it, because that is a very legal obligation with very hard deadlines. Benefits that are a real offering, not just some scramble. And number 5 is an HRIS system, a system of record, a single source of truth for your employee data, a true north. Who works for you, what they're paid, when they were hired, their benefit elections, their time off balances, their compliance documentation. At 50 employees on spreadsheets, you are not managing HR. You are managing massive risk. You don't need an enterprise system. You need one system that is the source of truth and is kept current. We also have an episode on that we'll link below. Now, having the list is actually the really easy part. Here's what actually matters when you're putting it in practice. First, you want to build in the right sequence. The components above are listed in the order they should be built. Payroll first. People need to be paid correctly at a minimum before anything else matters. Employment documentation second. Clean up what exists Put structure around every new hire from here forward, every separation, every performance event. Then come your core policies, benefits fourth, HRIS fifth, and once you have clean data and clear processes, then your HRIS makes sense. Founders get this wrong by building in the wrong order. They have this elaborate onboarding program on top of inconsistent payroll. They have this culture document before there's even a harassment policy or any training. They have an HRIS before the employment documentation it's going to house has even been created. The sequence matters because each layer depends on the one before it. The second one is build for where you're going, not where you are. And this is the one most founders miss. I said in the beginning, there's one thing that they miss. This is the one. Every infrastructure decision you make right now creates an obligation. It's not a one-time cost. It's a recurring one. Benefit contribution rates, PTO accrual structures, compensation structures, the way you pay bonuses, these aren't decisions you make once and file away. They become the baseline your employees expect, and your business has to sustain them. The founder who offers 100% employer-paid health benefits at 12 employees because they want to attract great people and they have the finances to be able to do that, they're making a very generous decision in the moment. But if the math doesn't hold at 25 employees or 40, they're either walking it back, which never goes well, I can tell you in my experience, or they are absorbing a cost that is compressing margin at the exact stage they need capital to grow. The question to ask before you put anything in place is this: does it scale? Can I hold this at twice the headcount I have now? Can I hold it at 3 times? If the honest answer is no, design it differently now. Scale it in over time as you can. Build in the structure so that adjustments happen as part of a defined framework, not as this reactive backtracking. This applies to compensation most of all. You never want to pull that back. If your pay bands are built informally, negotiated hire by hire, adjusted to reactively retain people, you are stacking a pay equity problem that's going to surface at 50 employees, and it's going to cost far more to unwind than it would have to just design it correctly at 15. Compensation infrastructure doesn't need to be complicated. It needs to be intentional, and it needs to be forward-looking. And the last one is to build before you think you need it. The founders who say they'll build this when they need it are almost always wrong about when they need it. You need it the first time an employee asks about their benefits, and no one can answer that. You need it the first time payroll runs late and someone goes to Glassdoor to leave a review. You need it the first time you have to terminate someone and you realize you have absolutely no documentation. The first time a former employee files a complaint and your attorney asks for personnel files you don't have, you needed it before then. Those situations don't happen at 100 employees. They happen at 18, at 22, at 30, earlier than you expect with way higher stakes than you're ready for. Infrastructure built before you need it is cheap. Infrastructure retrofitted after something breaks is really, really expensive in time, in money, and in the trust your team has in you as an operator. The small dog doesn't seem like a problem until it bites someone. Then everyone wishes someone had done the training earlier. Same principle applies here. The next episode is onboarding, as I mentioned, what it actually needs to look like by 25 employees and how to build a system that scales. Everything we cover today is what onboarding plugs into. You want to get this right first. If you're at 15, 20, 25 employees and you recognize gaps in this list, so payroll that's running on someone's memory, policies that don't exist or haven't been read since they were copied from the internet, a personnel file that is actually a folder of PDFs no one can find, this is where that work starts. Not when it breaks, right now. If you'd like to chat further about this topic or just see what else I say about scaling small businesses, and scaling that people infrastructure, then please connect with me on LinkedIn. My LinkedIn profile will be linked down below. You can connect with me and just let me know how many heads you have right now. How many employees do you have? What's your head count? I would love to connect with you. Most founders build reactively. They focus on sales, marketing, and product, and they treat people as an afterthought until the people start costing them everything. A business where people building is intentional, where the infrastructure exists before you need it, where HR is treated as a growth strategy, not a compliance function. That is a business that scales. Let's build that.